Defenders Live. I'm your host, Laura Thorson. Christopher Wyllie is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL who served in Naval Special Warfare with Special Boat Team 12 and SEAL Team 2, supporting combat and special operations missions during his time in uniform. Known for his steady leadership and commitment to the teams, Chris has continued serving the community long after active duty. Today, he plays a key leadership role with the Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy Navy SEAL Museum, where he helps preserve the legacy and sacrifice of naval special warfare and educate the public on the realities behind the mission. Chris was also invited to deliver remarks at the Navy's 250th celebration, speaking to the enduring importance of service, legacy, and brotherhood. Tonight, we're going to explore what it really means to carry that responsibility forward and what the rest of us can learn from it. Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed, whether you're watching on Rumble or YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you find this show. If you don't want to miss another episode, head to defenders-live.com and become a free subscriber. That way, every new episode gets delivered straight to your inbox. And if you're looking for top-tier firearms and self-defense training, go to defenders-usa.com and check the calendar to see what's coming to your area this year. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I've done my research on you as much as I can. I've watched some interviews that you've given with some other people. And one of my favorite interviews of you was with a couple. I tried to find out what the channel was. I couldn't remember it, but it was a husband and wife couple. And the wife came and took some B-roll footage of the museum, put it into the interview. It was a really touching interview. It was really good. Do you remember that one?
Yes, that's Walk with History. So they're both they were both active military, and Jen, I guess she retired. Her husband's still in serving right now, but her passion is history. So she travels around now and visits historical sites and documents them and puts them out as a podcast. And she's a really wonderful person to be around. Very uplifting and makes history fun. So that was a fun podcast and interview to be on.
Yeah, you guys should go watch that if you can. There's a lot of footage of the museum in there. I would like to get my hands on that to put it over this interview as well. It's really good. What you guys have done with that museum is really remarkable. It looks like you have put so much dedicated time and effort into that museum, and that wall that you have of all of the fallen soldiers is just amazing to me. And parts of that interview, Jen started getting pretty teared up about it, and I could really see her passion showing through with the mission.
Well, it's a very emotional museum. It's very factual, can give you the full history of naval special warfare from 1942 to present day, so you can learn a lot, but if you're really open and let your feelings come through, you could leave very moved. So we have a lot of people that, wind up crying and leaving in a somber somber feeling. Then we have other people that are inspired and, gung-ho afterwards because they just had a different takeaway. They had more of an inspirational takeaway. So it's really depends on the person, but the Cost of Freedom wall, if you really take in what that wall is signifying, it can be very emotional. It's one of my favorite spaces of the museum. The museum for me is very therapeutic. So I look at it as a positive. It helps me daily being there. I get to see the faces of my friends that are no longer here. I get to tell their stories. And then I also, get to remember what I accomplished, also educate and meet all of these wonderful guests and visitors that come in, school field trips and things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I bet you meet people from all walks of life. Are there any standout moments that you can think of from visitors?
Well, we had a visitor, we've been open 3 years now, and we had a visitor come in with an aide. This young man was hurt in a wrestling accident back when he was 13 in school. So he was slammed into something during practice and was sent home. He was, walking around fine, and then wound up, getting blurred vision, some speech issues. They brought him to the hospital, and then he wound up losing all of his ability to walk,
Oh,
move,
wow.
speak. So this young man comes into the museum on just like a regular day with an aide, and I'm just walking around in the museum, and the aide came to me and said, "Oh, this is Finn. He really, loves Navy SEALs." So got down on my knees, got to speak to him, and he had a very hard time getting his words out.
Mm.
But there was this passion, this twinkle, this life in his eyes. And he said, I'm going to get better. And I could see that. And then that person came back. He would come back every few months when he could, with a different aide sometimes.
Mm.
And he would tell me, what he was doing and how hard he was working. And then I
Mm.
got to watch that progression of healing. The doctors gave up on him after 2 years. They said, "Yeah, we don't think you're going to recover from this." And he willed himself back to a full recovery. So
Wow.
it's absolutely amazing, because I brought him out that after that first year of meeting him and getting close to him and meeting his family. I brought him out during one of the Murph challenges and gave him like a inspirational award for, like a fire in the gut, trying and working really hard,
I love
and
that.
asked the crowd to give Finn one more rep. I said, "Everybody, it's
Oh,
a hard workout, but let's give Finn one more rep, because Finn gives all he can every day." So he was in the wheelchair then. A year later, he was able to, not win in any way, but he was able to compete with us and actually
really?
run on his own and actually do some pull-ups and actually do some push-ups. So I mean, that is uh,
Wow.
how amazing that young man was. And it was the mindset, and I guess the inspiration he got from visiting the museum. So that was one of the standout people that I'll never forget. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. How old was he at this time? Teenager?
That he was a teenager. He just got his driver's license, like his learning permit, and he was having a problem even just taking the test recently, but he got through that.
Wow.
So he's 6'4", I think now, and towers over me, but but he has this wonderful presence, and I'm
Oh,
just so blessed to have met him, but watched him transform his own life. He manifested his own destiny,
yeah.
because the big thing I would take away from Finn in that experience is that he never, as a teenager that I saw, maybe he did at some point in this journey of his, but from whenever he was at the museum, I never saw him play the victim. He
Mm.
never was like, "This is unfair. I can't believe this happened to me." All he kept saying was, "I'm going to get better. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to do the best I can." And he was always positive. And
Mm.
I try to remember that, when I explain and describe that experience with Finn. I try to remember that, because he never had that victim mentality.
Mm. Sounds like a good candidate for this show.
I'll put you in contact with him. He's actually very funny too.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, no,
great.
he's got a personality. He's still in
Yeah.
high school, so I think he's 16, maybe going on 17 soon.
What an inspiration. Wow. In the most, like, you just never know where you're going to get inspiration from, right, Chris?
That's it. And he found it. He had somebody bring him to the museum, and every few months he would come in. Sometimes,
Mm.
he'd have a walker. He would make sure that he came and showed me his progress. And
Wow.
I was just blessed to be part of that journey with him.
Wow. I love that. That's so cool. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Lieutenant Murphy because I had heard of him, but I didn't really know his story. I know what he represents, but I didn't
Mhm.
really get to know him. Um, for those watching who maybe have heard of him or have heard of the Murph Challenge in CrossFit, I know that's a thing.
Yeah.
What is it about him particularly that we should be honoring not just his sacrifice, but it sounds like just who he was as a person, his entire life, which you said there were stories corroborated of his life from the time he was a child until the time he passed away, from all different people that that were from his childhood or from his school or whatever. What kind of a man was he?
It seemed like he was one of those people that was just a protector. He always thought of maybe the smaller person or the underdog kind of person in whatever scenario or situation he was in. So if he was in school and somebody was being bullied, he stepped in even if he didn't know the kid. If he was at a party and something wasn't going right, he would tell everybody, "Hey, stop it. This is not right," and protect people. So he had the nickname, Murph the Protector, from when he was young, a young kid in high school, protecting bullies. So the way I try to explain it to people is that as a fellow SEAL and hearing about him, I'm older than Michael by a couple of years. I was in the military earlier than him. He went to Penn State and had to wait because he wanted a commission. So I was in for about 7 years before I got hurt and medically discharged, and he came in right after September 11th. So we never had any overlap.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really know of him until after he passed. So you hear all of these huge stories. A lot of times family members and people, once they pass, these stories get, exaggerated a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And before getting to know the family and before getting involved in the museum, I personally, and I'm honest with this, I was a little skeptical. I'm like, how could this person be this amazing, have this perfect character? People, that most people strive to be. And, it's very hard to be that. And so when I got involved with the museum and I heard all of these different stories and got to know everybody even closer, over time, I got to meet all of these people that grew up with him. And then I met all of the people that may have been in the school when these things happened, not very close to him as like a best friend, but they saw it. They were there. They were friends in the same group, whatever. But they would say the same thing. So it just got validated. All of these stories of what he did were just validated over and over again by so many layers of people that I was, not, I was convinced that that's actually who that man was. He was a person who cared, a person that sacrificed himself, that, take the shirt off his back for anybody. And it's a great story, to hear about and to learn about him. The museum tells a story about everybody, but we do have areas that have videos playing about him growing up and things of that nature, because we are a museum on Long Island, and a lot of that history touches on, different locations on the island where he grew up. So it's amazing how much and how large that man, his character was.
Yeah, and how his legacy lives on and continues to inspire people, even teenagers, right?
It's 20 years. Last June 28th was 20 years when he died. So I was speaking at the last Murph, when we did it just before that. And I was shocked because every year more and more people come together, and every year people will remember him, 20 years later. And he's still, like you said, inspiring people, and he still matters. And that's, people are still living up or trying to live up to his example.
Yeah. And the story about how he died too is a big part, I think, of his legacy, which is, and I don't know all the details, so fill me in here if I'm missing anything, but it sounds like his small team that he was with was ambushed. And the reason they were ambushed is because they were in Afghanistan in the mountains. So the terrain was horrific anyway. Right. And it seems like there was a person, an Afghan, that wasn't a militant. They were just a person or something. And they captured him, but then let him go because they weren't a threat or something. But then they went and told people in the village that they were there. And then, then they were ambushed. I think this is right. And he had to get communication out to get help for them because they were stranded. And the only way he could do that was to put himself in harm's way. Right?
That is a very good summary. I'm going to just clarify a few little points for you.
Yeah.
So to fill in the details, we were a 4-man team to go look for this Taliban member named Shah that was killing American soldiers, throughout Afghanistan. So he was a high up, Taliban target. And the guys were inserted into a spot in Afghanistan that was very densely populated with terrorists and Taliban members in those villages. So it was a really dangerous area to put 4 guys in, and they didn't have close support. So the closest the quick reaction force, the QRF, would be was 45 minutes away via helicopter. So It was a very dangerous thing. They were going in to verify the target. And what happened was they verified the target, and now we don't like walking around during the day. We would like to sneak around at night. So we're sitting, they're sitting in the woods waiting for nightfall so they can exfil and get out of there. Mm-hmm. And a goat herder and 2 young boys came up the mountain with the goats, and they kind of stumbled upon where they were hiding. So the issue we have, and this is where you get a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks when I do these tours and explain, this operation and how it went wrong. You have a lot of people that have, ideas of what they should have done. And this is what happened, though, is we have rules of engagement. I think everybody's heard of that, ROEs. And we're not allowed to hurt civilians, which ethically and morally we wouldn't do anyway, especially if it was a kid. So their only option was, you could kill them, bury them, but they could get in trouble, or you could tie them up and leave them. The problem with tying them up and leaving them is, one, you have these goats with bells all over their neck now roaming, freely. That's going to alarm the villagers going, where's the goat herders?
Right.
And then the other part is that if they left them and they did leave at night, what happens if they never were found? Wild animals get them, they starve, something happens. So they were so concerned with the safety of these 2 boys and this elder goat herder that they understood the danger that they were putting themselves in, but ultimately released them. Okay. And then they said, okay, we're going to get out of here as fast as we can. And these guys, they don't live in the mountains, so now they're trying to find their way out and gain distance, knowing that they had a 50-50 shot that these people were going to go down and tell the villagers, and the Taliban were going to come up and engage them. So they tried to get away, realized that they had less cover. It was more barren where they were going, that they turned around, came back towards a defensible position. And then all of a sudden they got, attacked. So it was an overwhelming force, number wise, compared to a 4-man team in the mountains. So they fought, and what we have as SEALs, we're not going to get refueled, as in we're not getting food, water, ammunition drops so we can sit there and fight all day. Right. We only have what we have on us. So we're taught to fight and move. So you try to fight, get a lull in the battle, and then you try to peel and move and get some distance between you and the enemy, do it again, and keep getting some distance so you can kind of get away. So that's what they're trying to do. The problem is the only way that they could go was down. So they're like falling off cliffs and jumping and breaking bones. And, it just was a really, really poor situation to be in. And the Taliban technically had all the high ground, forcing them down into this valley, and everybody shot, the radio's destroyed. And Michael was the officer on the mission, and he had a satellite phone. So he had to step out into the open with full 360 view of the sky to make sure that the call would go through. So what I explain to people is that when you play with walkie-talkies or something like that, I'm trying to use terminology and devices that people that may have not been in the military understand. But when you're playing with like a walkie-talkie and the other person hears that click and hears you start to speak, they kind of know who you are, what you're doing or something. But when you're dialing a phone, it's just ringing somewhere on the base. That person's picking it up thinking, oh, okay, this is, DoorDash, whatever. It's something, it could be just a clerical phone call. So now, one, it had to ring. So he's standing exposed, getting shot at, waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for somebody to pick it up, waiting for somebody to say, good afternoon, Petty Officer so-and-so, how can I help you? And he's in a life or death situation trying to explain, this is, Michael Murphy, I need to speak to this person. These are our coordinates. This is what we need. You can only imagine how long that must have felt for him. And he gets shot twice in the back just on the phone. But he's able to complete the phone call, and they're sending the quick reaction force. But like I said, that was 45 minutes away. He goes back to fighting for another minute or so, and he winds up getting killed. So Danny Dietz, who was the radio operator, he died just before Michael. Michael winds up dying. Matt Axelson, who was one of the sniper target sharpshooter guys, he winds up dying, and Marcus is separated. Marcus Luttrell, the lone survivor, separated a little bit. Then he sees the quick reaction force coming in, the helicopters. Then the Taliban, as the helicopter turns to let more SEALs out to help, they shoot a rocket, hit that helicopter, kill everybody in the helicopter. So the second helicopter is forced to abort the mission to help because it was so dangerous. And Marcus sees all of this and winds up crawling on his stomach overnight down a ravine until he's protected by another villager on the other side of the mountain. He gets recovered about 5 days later. So really bad day, bad mission. Sometimes the bad guys have a better day than we do. But that is the little more detail into what you said. You had a pretty good general idea what happened, but it was
I gotta tell you, I
Huh?
got a lot. Just that little detail, or not even detail, the generalization that I had is more than I had before I knew who you were and was doing research on this interview. So I'm grateful for that,
Yeah.
because these are things we need to know.
Mhm.
These are important things. These aren't just like stories in a storybook. These are real lives, real people with real families, and
Yeah, absolutely.
that's, I think it's easy to forget that sometimes, just what kind of a cost and a sacrifice that is.
Well, a lot of people don't have a life experience that puts you in those situations. So it's very difficult for especially younger kids when they come through the museum, and I'm giving a tour with high school kids or middle school kids. Their bad day is their phone's taken away, or they crack their screen, or something simple, and then that's horrific to them. They don't understand the sacrifice that the law enforcement, firemen, military personnel do daily to keep our freedoms and to protect us. So it's hard for them to get it yet. I hope they don't ever get it. I hope they don't ever suffer or feel those things. But yeah, they're real people that have sacrificed their all for us.
Sorry, I'm just feeling really heavy right now.
Sorry.
The museum, where is it located?
The museum's located in West Sayville, New York, right on Long Island. It's the South Shore of Long Island. So it's right near the water on a nice county golf course. So you can come and play golf and visit the museum.
And I think his gravesite is near there, isn't it?
Yes, it's about 30 minutes, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on traffic. New York has lovely traffic. Depending on traffic, further east, it's in a place called Calverton National Cemetery. So the family could have had Michael buried at Arlington National Cemetery, but they decided because he's from Long Island and we could have him buried at Calverton, that they would rather him be close to home. So his father actually moved. I think he's about 3 minutes away from his grave. So.
I don't know why I'm like, just give me a second.
No problem.
I didn't expect that to affect me the way that it did. Because you're talking about military, but you're also talking about law enforcement, first responders of any kind, right? Fire, EMS. And I know some of those people are my friends. And not that I know a lot about it, but I have a lot of respect for those people and for what they do. And gone on a few ride-alongs with some of the deputies in my county and with the captain. And yeah, asked a lot of good questions. And every time that I hear you guys, when I say you guys, I mean first responders or military talk, it bothers me a bit, even though it's just reality in the way it is, that the general population just doesn't have a clue.
They've been allowed to not respect the military and the police and the first responders. And it's a message that I will continue to put out there until I'm no longer able to. But those are the people that you call when you need help. Mm-hmm. So if you're choking or somebody's, on the floor and you don't know, unresponsive, the first people you call are 911. And to be disrespectful, to be able to, throw things and protest and hurt them, when those are going to be the exact people a day later that you're going to call for help, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And like I said, that's just it's not a political thing. It's more of a, people that are, their whole job, their whole persona is sacrifice,
Their
is
life.
being selfless. They're being selfless. They're putting you ahead of themselves to try to protect you and help you.
And
so
their
why
family,
would you be mad?
Because their family sacrifices as well,
Yes.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll get off that soapbox. Okay, let's switch gears here, because I think it's really interesting and very cool that you got to give a speech on the 250th anniversary of the Navy. I mean, what an honor. I can't imagine. How did this all come about?
So I have a wonderful friend named Hannah Stone, who she does these big White House, coordination events, and used to work in the White House. So she's involved with all of this. So she asked me and my friend Jason Redman, and she asked me first to come down and do some social media hits, meet the sailors, do things like that with Jason. And I said, absolutely. I love that kind of recharges me. And I found that it recharges all of us, to be honest with you, the more I talk about it. So, we won't be around other SEALs, and then all of a sudden you could feel yourself going into a funk a little bit. And then all of a sudden you get an opportunity to get together, and then you feel good again for a few months, So the minute she offered the opportunity for me to do that, I said, sure, that sounds like a fun time. We'll go down, meet some sailors, do some social media hits, and that'll be it. So that was maybe 10 days or 2 weeks out before the event was going to happen. And as we started getting closer and closer to the event, Hannah reached out and said, to both of us, Jason and myself, and said, could you guys write a speech for 10 to 15 minutes? And I went, 10 or 15 minutes, that's a long speech. And so I had to ask her, what topic do you want to hit on? And she kind of, we brainstormed, and we came up with, she wanted me to talk about the museum and the veteran part. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, it was fairly close to where, the Secretary of War did that generals and admirals, conference when he went in and made that big speech. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I want to touch on that. I'll talk about service after service, and I will talk about the museum and try to bring it all together. Now, Jason is a professional speaker. That's what he does. He has his story of being shot and wounded and almost dying. And so he already has, speaking points and speeches that he could tailor to this. So I started putting pen to paper and wound up coming up with that speech like 3 days before. I was working on it the morning of, because I couldn't figure out how to get those 3 different topics to like meld together and come back and have like a cohesive flow. And I woke up at like 3 a.m. the morning of, and was like, I got it. And it was like literally 1 or 2 words that I had to put in there, and I had to take out a couple of words in a different section. And then I felt so confident with it.
If you've been listening to Defenders Live and something in you knows it's time to go deeper, not just in your training, but in your life, become a paid subscriber of Defenders Live. Each month we meet for a live group call, having real conversations about physical growth, emotional discipline, and spiritual strength. You'll be part of a growing community of people just like you, committed to becoming true defenders of life and of their families. This isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, doing the work, and not doing it alone. So go to defenders-live.com and become a paid subscriber and take your next step toward becoming the kind of defender this world desperately needs.
But that is how I got asked to do it, and I'm hoping to be more involved this year with Freedom 250 and the celebration of our nation's 250th anniversary. But went down and Hannah did that, and it was the largest crowd I've ever stood in front of, and I was honored and blessed to stand at the same podium as the President of the United States. So as we spoke a little later, he came down, he spoke at the same podium on the same platform, and my wife and kids got to sit in the front row and watch this, and it was it was just, I'm still reeling from it from that long ago, and it's still, mind blowing that I did it, So I see pictures and I'm like, wow, it's a lot of people. So
yeah, do you ever look at that and go, whoa, that's me? That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would love to have the opportunity to do it again. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that maybe something for 4th of July. I could be able to be involved down in DC for that. That would be another dream come true for me, to speak and be out there in front of people and explain what I love about this country. Yeah. I thought it went really well. I mean, I never would have guessed you were still working on it like hours before you gave it. It seemed very well put. You seem very well put together. Well, the funny thing is that, the moments leading up to the actual speech time, we're doing other media hits and things with the news and stuff like that. And then we're getting ushered to the steps by the stage to go up. And this gentleman comes over to us and he goes, "You have 10 minutes. And Jason and I both look at each other, and Jason goes, "My speech is 15 minutes to the second. I've timed it, practiced it, 15 minutes to the second." I didn't do that. I didn't have time to time it and practice it. I knew it was about 10, 11 minutes. So we're told that. So then he says, when you go up on stage, there's 2 teleprompter screens that are next to the podium. Our speeches aren't up there. So we had to have our own iPads to read, because that was for the president. So he goes, "There's a countdown clock on the teleprompters." So think of the pressure of trying to speak, trying to read off of the iPad, trying to not sound rushed, not sound frazzled. And at the same time, every time I looked up and you're looking through that clear glass, it's like 3 minutes and 26 seconds, 3 minutes and 25 seconds left. I'm like oh my God, So yeah, it went beyond what I expected I could do on that. But it was definitely one of those things when somebody says, "Hey, can you do this?" Most of us, have that mindset going, yeah. Yeah, and you handled it really well. Handled it really well. It's fun. It's funny for me, like now watching it a couple times, to know the behind the scenes story. I love that. Yeah. Oh yeah. We were literally sitting there like behind going, "Oh my God, what can we take out?" I love that. That's so awesome. Okay, cool. Well, let me talk about some of the things you said in the speech, because
Much of it I resonated with, and I have never been in the military. But as I told you before the show, I think that a lot of the people that are watching this are defenders of life, which is the whole reason I have this show. It is a mindset, a heart set, and skill set, right? That's needed to be a defender of life. And some of the things that you said, even though it was for a military audience, I'm like, I feel like this is life. This is life stuff, right? And this is about people who care about their families and their communities. They want to do better in all areas of growth in their life. And that's what I promote here on the show. So let me read some of these things, and I might ask for more clarification on some of them. But you said that we're always ready to defend those who cannot defend themselves. Of course, yes. And many of us are called to that, whether we've been in the military or not. Readiness is not a posture. It's a way of life. It's who we are every day in every choice we make. Could you say more about what readiness means to you?
Well, stemming from the Secretary of War's speech and the standards, and that's where the readiness part came from in my mind of why I wanted to touch on that, is that people think that, you could just be, you could be at the police precinct, you could be at the firehouse, and you could be on a military base, and you can just sit there, and that's readiness. Readiness is training. Readiness is being prepared. Readiness is having physical fitness standards, having codes of conduct, having uniform dress, having all of these things, because you never know when you're needed. You can't just all of a sudden be ready when you're not, so you have to be always preparing to be ready, to be used. And that was the messaging that I was trying to get across, because it's very difficult with the temperature of things, let me say it that way, where, you need to have set certain standards, especially for military. And what Secretary of War was doing, he wasn't making new standards. He was bringing everything back to the original standards. That's what people didn't understand. They thought he was making all these tremendous changes, but he was saying, wait a second, no, we're not going to have two different physical fitness tests. We're just going to go back to one, and this is how it works. This is the way it always was. So that was making our military less ready by having all of this fluff. And now, to be ready, you have to be practicing. You have to be putting in the effort and training and those things.
Totally agree. And I promote that as well and I'm on the civilian side of things, but it still applies. And my dog's barking because the Epps man's here, but we're going to roll with it.
No problem.
So here's another, I think it's a direct quote. It's pretty close that you said, which resonated with me, which is, people think the fight is out there. The truth is that the fight is within. And then you go on to talk about, are you going to rise to the standard of warriors? This couldn't be more true. And it seems as though, especially in our culture, with such an outcome focused type of culture that we have, the next quick fix, the next thing out there, right, that I can buy or do or take that's going to get me XYZ results, when really what I've learned through my own transformation is that everything starts within me first. And if I can't conquer the demons inside of me, then nothing externally is going to follow. Like, it all starts with the mind first. Is that what you're referring to, or something else?
No, that's pretty much what I'm referring to. The problem is that, we're bombarded with, motivational quotes and personal trainers and all of these things, especially, on social media. It's quick 15, 20, 30-second, sayings and ideas and thoughts and opinions. So we all know what we need to do. That's what it is. We all know we need to get up, we need to work out, we need to try our hardest with work, with our family, with, our health, right? So we all know that. That's a given. The problem is that we're creatures of comfort. we would rather, our minds would rather be comfortable. Our minds would rather not feel stress. And when you stress yourself by going to the gym and really putting in a hard workout, that's tiring. You have to find the time. So that's the whole thing, is the mindset. We're beholden to our mind. And if we can control our minds and our thoughts and wake up every day and just crush the day that way, where you're going step by step, doing your best, you're going to become undefeatable. And I'm trying to set that example with the community, with my children, and people I come across at the museum, that you have control over your destiny. It's just, how badly do you want it? That's what the hard part is to understand that delayed gratification, like what you described. Everybody wants the quick fix, or the supplement that's going to make you better. It's not that. You still need to put in the work. You still need to put in the effort, and it's not going to come overnight. But people quit.
Yeah.
So they quit before they get going.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then the mindset, especially as a SEAL mindset, you never quit. I'd rather, and this is what I tell kids, I'd rather see you try 100 times to get to where you want to be than try once and quit. Because if you keep trying, that's just your first attempt. That's, people look at it as failure. It's not failure. You learn something from it. Now you have to work harder and get a little further the next time. So everybody's so quick to be like, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. No, go back to the drawing board, put some more effort in, figure out where you went wrong, and do it again. But that's where that point was, with waking up and trying to become a warrior, was stemming from that mindset of, you have to put in the work. You have to have that mindset that I'm never going to quit.
And you know what I love about fitness is that you can't fake it.
Yeah, no, you cannot. It goes away a whole lot faster, right?
Yeah, if you have not paid your dues, if you have snuck in the Snickers bars and the Twinkies for way too long, it shows.
Absolutely.
Your body does not lie.
Nope. And if you take a break, you lose that progress that you made. So it may take you 3 months to get someplace. It only takes you a month to lose it all. So it's frustrating, but fitness is a life journey, and it's a lifelong, thing. I'm medically retired. I have all these problems with my body, and I have to force myself mentally to get out of bed sometimes, and force myself to go to the gym. But it's when I get to the gym, even though I was arguing in my own head all that whole 15 minutes, I always feel better.
Yeah, me too.
So it's always a positive,
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's a gift, really. Over time, it becomes a gift. And I think, it depends on how you frame it, how you decide to look at it. It's like everything else in life. You can look at this as, I hate it and I don't want to do it, and that's fine, but you do it anyway. And other days you can look at it as like, this is the biggest gift ever. I'm so grateful I can move my body at all. It's really that shift in perspective can really change a workout. I wanted to go back to something that you didn't say it in these words, but the way that you were speaking made it come up for me, which is you're talking about rising to the standard of warriors. Okay. I think that even if you're not in the military, you can rise to the standard of a warrior if that's who God made you to be. And part of the reason, like you were talking, that people don't even give it enough time to see through their goals or the progress. They're like, it's not working, I'm quitting, whatever. Do you think, how much of that do you think is based around, I think this is everything, and what it was for me, which was identity. For you guys, you're in the military, right? Like part of your identity, who you are as a person is, I'm a Navy SEAL. I'm a person who does the right thing when the right thing needs done, no matter how hard it is. I'm a person who has integrity. I'm a person that, fill in the blank. I don't see any reason why I can't have that same mindset, right? And why I can't have that same identity, not calling myself a Navy SEAL, but have that warrior identity and that warrior mindset. Do you have any advice, I guess, for me or anybody else who feels that calling and that drive to be a defender of life, to be a warrior in everyday life, to show up in real ways for their family and for their community that can help reset or regain a new perspective on that identity portion?
Yeah, I touch on this a little bit. I think you described it beautifully just with the question. But I touch on this a little bit with certain tours that I do. So if I do a tour with like an athletic team, I hit on leadership and I hit on a few things. And there's a passage in our SEAL creed where it is that, I wear the trident. It's in my chosen profession, and it is something that I must earn every day. So the trident is our big symbol for Navy SEALs. But I try to explain to people that you don't meet a Navy SEAL very often. There's only been about 14,000 of us over 82 years. So it's a very few and far between. And if I wake up and I'm not in a great mood and I go to the museum and people meet me and I'm a jerk, you're going to have that glimpse of, oh my God, that guy's a jerk. That must be all of the Navy SEALs. So I have to, no matter what my own emotional state is, I have to rise to the occasion to what, people would expect to see when they're looking for the tip of the spear. And I have to do that daily. I'm running the Navy SEAL Museum. So it's a very difficult thing to do, but it's a mindset. So anybody could do that. You don't have to be a Navy SEAL. So if you need to take care of your family, you need to take care of other things in your life, you just need to get it through your head that I have to emulate whatever I'm trying to be to the best of my ability every single day, because that's what I have to do. There's no choice in the matter. That's the thing. And people pick and choose when they want to do something hard or when they want to do something or they don't want to do it, right? So, it isn't a choice for me. I have to rise to the occasion. I have to show and emulate the tip of the spear whenever I'm, around people. And it's not easy some days. I deal with mental, health issues like a lot of the guys. We all have our own things going on. And, sometimes I don't want to speak to people, but that's my job. I got to go and give a tour. And by the time I start talking to the kids and getting questions, then I start feeling better. But I still have to show on the outside that I'm that person.
Okay, 2 questions from that.
Sure.
One is, do you believe that it's true that if someone were to emulate a Navy SEAL, I'm thinking of that teenager Finn, and that's who's in my mind. Someone were to emulate the ethos of a Navy SEAL in their everyday life, the ethos of a warrior. Do you think that literally over time they would become and not just be pretending to be that person who works out every day, who takes care of themselves, who is there for their family, or whatever the case may be? Like, I think that over time, maybe a lot of time, what starts as emulation can really turn into who you really are over time.
Well, I agree with you 100% that if you emulate something and then it becomes a ritual or a habit of expecting yourself to do those things and rise to the level of a warrior, right? Now you're building discipline. And that's the hardest thing to build is discipline. Discipline is you're doing stuff that you have to do even when you don't want to do it. That's the simplest definition of discipline. So motivation comes and goes. Everybody's heard that, I'm not motivated to do this. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, I'm not motivated to go to the gym, but I go to the gym. It's 4:30 in the morning. I go to bed at midnight. So a lot of times I wake up and I'm going, oh my God, I can sleep more if I don't go to the gym. But I have to take that discipline, that years of putting something into a habit that ultimately like solidifies and becomes my discipline. And that's how you ultimately turn into the things that you're trying to become. So if you want to be a doctor, you want to get through school, you want to do those things. If you are disciplined and do the work and put the time in and cut out the distractors, right? You cut out the things that are going to take that time away from you. And it's hard because when you're young and you're going through those things, you have friend groups, you have parties to go to, you want to go out and go on a vacation, you want to do this, you want to do that, instead of focusing on that path that you wanted to take. So you have to pick and choose where you want to what you ultimately want to do. So if you want to emulate something and you want to get there, everybody could do it. It's just who's going to stick to it the longest and actually do it.
And for me, I'll just speak for myself and then I'll see what you think of this, because I'm really interested to know your point of view based on your background. For me, the reason that what I've done has stuck this time, because when I was younger, I tried it, but it never really stuck. This time is different because there's purpose behind it. It's because I feel like I'm not doing this for me necessarily. It's to serve a larger purpose of readiness, like what you say, for my family, for when I'm out in public. And I have given myself, or I feel like I have a personal responsibility that if I'm going to be a firearms instructor, carry a gun every day and be out in public or whatever, I have a responsibility to stay at a certain level of readiness. And I don't mean paranoia or anything like that. I just mean like awareness and competency, physical ability. And I need to keep myself sharp, mentally as well, so that I can, know what the heck is going on and maybe avoid something before it ever begins, kind of a deal. Yeah. For me personally, feel like that is a responsibility and not a burden. I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful that God's given me the capacity to do those things, but I take them seriously. Right.
Yeah.
And so it feels like, yeah, maybe it is about me a little bit, because I feel great when I am disciplined and when I do the things I know I'm supposed to do and be the person I know I'm supposed to be. But it's also this thing of maybe it feels like there's something bigger than me in a way that has called me to it, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it.
No, well, you defined it, your purpose, so finding purpose in life and losing purpose in life are two amazing things. So I've lost purpose from when I got medically retired from the SEALs. I did not want to get out of the military. So I come back to a world that doesn't know what I did, doesn't understand what I did. Back in a time when there weren't movies and books and things like that, like there are now. And trying to reacclimate myself back into society, which you really can't, because everything's different for you now. So I lost my purpose. So I lost my way, and I dealt with mental health issues for a long time, and I made a lot of mistakes. I, opened a business, and I tried to buy things. I tried to do things. I tried to fill the void with all these different things, and none of it was working. So the minute I found the purpose of what you said, something bigger than myself, when I said, I'm going to help another veteran, even though I need help, right? So I'm going to help somebody else. And the minute I started helping other people, and it was helping me at the same time, and I didn't understand that. So as time went on, I realized, okay, this is making me feel better and being around other veterans. And then I started figuring out my purpose had to be something to do with veterans. And the museum came along on its own, because I was trying to get involved with the museum on a business side with doing the audio video and help create the museum, because I was a Navy SEAL on Long Island, and I heard the museum was getting created. It was more, never did I think I would be running a museum. Let me say that. If you told me 10 years ago that I would be dressing mannequins and giving tours to school kids, I would have laughed at you. But it's that purpose of educating and not letting these guys' stories fade with time. All of those things that are therapeutic to me, and things that I'm blessed to have right now. And the same thing with you, where you're saying you're carrying a firearm out in public. You have situational awareness, and it's a great responsibility to have a firearm in public and have the ability to use a firearm. Right. So you have a big responsibility for that, but that's your purpose. You're going to educate people on how to defend themselves, how to protect their lives, the lives of their families, and how to pass that down in a very professional, safe way. That's a tremendous responsibility. So you should feel proud of that.
Yeah. I love your story, though. I love how Nothing went as planned, Chris.
No, no, no. I don't know how much time you have. I think we'd have to have 3 podcasts to do this,
I
but
was just thinking, I wonder
yeah,
if the Chris Wyllie story could be another episode of this
yeah.
podcast. I don't know if
Oh,
you're willing.
I would be more than willing to do that if you'd
Yeah,
like.
that
Yeah.
might help a lot of guys too. I know that there are a lot of guys out there struggling right now for various reasons, but I know a lot of veterans are struggling right now too. And I know
Well,
that that's a big part of what you do is try to help.
well, that and listen, I've with a quick synopsis of it, I've struggled and failed and struggled again and rebuilt myself and then failed again, and I've had so many ups and downs in 52 years that it's like a roller coaster. But we all have that.
Yeah.
It's these guys. They're a lot of times we're looking on a phone and we see everybody and everybody has this amazing life on the outside, and it's not what's going on, and it
Mhm.
doesn't help you when you're not feeling good about yourself,
Yeah.
especially when you've lost purpose, you've lost contact with your friends, you're not in the fight anymore. So you think that everyone else is doing so much better than you because you're kind of in a pity party that you can't get out of in your
Mhm.
own mind, and
Mhm.
it's difficult. And literally, I'm not too proud to say I've been at the point where I could have no longer been there. I could have
Mhm.
been off this face of the earth, and I was able to fix that. And now I'm in a much better mindset. But there have been tremendous highs and tremendous lows, and if people say that they're perfect and they've never been experienced that, they're lying to you.
Yeah. Everybody's a mess. That's what I always say. We're all a mess. We're all just doing the best we can.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, that's it. But if we can all help each other and all support each other, then more of us are gonna be bringing be brought along for this
right.
journey.
Totally agree. And I don't think this is something people should do alone. I think that we are wired to be connected with other humans. And when we isolate and go into the shame cave, and for some people that's a really deep, deep, dark place, there's not much good that comes from that. And so the fact that you're out here speaking the way that you are is really powerful. I was wondering, can people reach out to you on your Instagram handle? Because I know you have the museum page, and you also have your personal page. I didn't ask you before the show.
Oh no, absolutely. I would love to, if anybody wants to message me, and then we could sidebar and talk. I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay.
I'll check the messages as often as I can. I'm not ignoring anybody, especially
Yeah.
if they're reaching out for help. They could contact the museum when during business hours. If they want to call, they can call the museum. If you're a veteran or anybody who needs to talk or wants to, want somebody to listen, I'm here. I'll do that. I have no problem, and there's no judgment. I've done it more often than I could count.
Mhm.
And mental health is a negative stigma. Granted, I think and I believe and I feel that it's getting more. I'm not going to use the term mainstream, but people are accepting it more, that it's
Mhm.
not this negative thing anymore. So
Right.
I have always been a person that doesn't mind being the spokesperson about mental health, because a lot of people are afraid to talk about it. And that's the biggest problem about mental health, is that if you don't talk and you don't put it out there and you don't say, hey, I need help or I feel this way, it's just going to get worse.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And I think there's an idea too that like this person can't understand what I'm going through, which might be the case, but for me at least, just having somebody there just to listen at all is
mhm.
helpful, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, a
yeah.
lot of people don't like calling hotlines and calling these different places, especially the VA, because then they want
Mm.
your name. Then they try to
Right.
call you in, and then you're afraid that things are documented, and it turns into a whirlwind of avoidance.
Right.
And now you're not dealing with an issue; you're avoiding the issue, and you're wasting time. You're wasting valuable time to get the help that you need.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm more than happy to speak to people if they want to or feel like they would like to connect.
You're a good man.
try to be. I try to be. I really am. I wish everybody, like you said, would just care about each other and get along with each other, and the world would be a much better place.
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening and not watching, if you want to check out the museum, you can go to MURPH, MURPH, MurphSealMuseum.org. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram. And Chris's handle on Instagram is C Wyllie, and Wyllie has 2 L's _seal. That didn't come out quite right, but I tried.
It's okay. They'll find me if they put
a speech anytime soon. Well, Chris, you've been an absolute pleasure to have on, and I really do think sharing your story with others would be really valuable and helpful. You just come across as a really incredibly humble guy. I don't see you hiding anything or coming across arrogant at all or trying to be a certain way. You're not performative. And I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. You know, I'm not polished with this in any way. And it's just more, I'm comfortable speaking with you. I'm comfortable speaking in general, but you're going to get what you get, you know? So that's why I love editing, but you can get what you get, and I'm going to be open and honest, and usually don't hold anything back. So if somebody asks me a question and I feel like that's going to be impactful or helpful for them, I'm going to answer it as bluntly and as honestly as I can. So
I appreciate that.
No, I loved being on the show with you tonight.
Yeah. Go check out the museum, guys, and hopefully we'll get Chris back. Put in the comments if you'd like to see him come back, because I, for one, would love to hear your story. But we've run out of time for tonight. I think the attention span of most people has run out. So we're going to call it good for tonight, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.